Well, I'm definitely not getting into the Washburn Lion project again, I promise. I just set up a little bit of a new work area on my table here, and I'm using this industrial carpet to keep the necks from getting scratched on my stand here, my little neck stand, and also to have something better to set the guitars on here on my workbench. So I'm using the Washburn Lion for sizing, and it looks like I've got enough carpet here to work, and so I'm happy about that. But the one thing I did want to show off for the Telecoustic is I've got I believe 3 coats on here now of the tung oil finish, and I don't have this last one completely buffed out now, but you can really start to tell the difference in the color between the finished wood and the unfinished headstock. You can really tell that this, if I put enough coats of it on, will really start to give this sort of a honey tone. And I want to stop before I get too honey toned, because I still want to put a lacquer finish on the front of this face here, and I don't want the colors to be too different. I haven't decided yet what I'm going to do about a decal, but I think I am going to try to do some sort of a custom decal. I don't know. I'm almost talking myself out of it, but we'll see. I've done several water slide decals on headstocks before. They always turn out great, so we'll see. Really quickly, I just wanted to show what I've been doing between coats. So this is about 5 coats of tung oil. It's not super glossy, and the reason is I take quadruple aught, that's 4 zeros, steel wool. It's very fine steel wool, and I just scuff the entire neck, every surface, up here, the edges, the very end, you know, every surface, even along the rosewood on the sides, not the top, and just kind of knock down the shine. And that does 2 things. It smooths everything out, removes any imperfections, prepares for the next coat, and it makes it really nice and slick feeling for your hand, especially when, you know, when you're playing. It kind of gives that almost a natural wood feel, except it's really smooth. So it's a really cool finish. I've heard a lot of people are using that like gunstock refinishing type oil now. That it's a true oil or something like that. I've been interested to try that, but I've had a lot of success with this tung oil over the years, so I'm at least going to finish out my can before I buy any of that gunstock stuff. But this is a really cool finish, and all that's left to do now, I'm going to oil this fretboard, and then I'll start on the refinishing of the headstock. Okay, so oiling a fretboard, you can use a lot of things, but I like to use a lemon oil treatment. Again, this is Formby's, and this can is, or this bottle is probably 20 years old or more, but I think they still sell this under several brands, and Minwax bought Formby, so there may be a Minwax version. You can buy specific oils that are made by music branded companies for fretboards. They're like fretboard conditioners and cleaners. You know, I'm sure those work fine. I've seen a lot of people use linseed oil on fretboards too. That's fine. Yet I think you do have to be a little bit more careful with linseed oil, because it's more of a finish than something like a lemon oil. When you're applying lemon oil, you can use a soft cloth, but one thing that I like to use, especially in a case like this where I've got a few little scuffs that I want to try to rub out, I'll use a very fine steel wool, like a 3/0 or a 4/0, and you go with the grain, and you can try to protect the frets if you want, but this is really not going to do much to the frets if you use a 4/0 steel wool. and I'll just squirt some of this onto the steel wool, and you can see it go on. Just try to make a nice even coat. So on a normal guitar, what I would do is just coat it, let it sit, let it soak in, and usually you're done when most of the oil gets soaked in and you don't have to wipe much excess away. Excuse me. With this guitar, it's a brand new neck. I'm going to scrub a little bit on the spots that I think need a little bit of help. There was just a couple scuffs around the 4th fret and the 6th fret, so I'm going to address those, but same process after that. I'll just let it soak, recoat it, and it'll be good to play. So here's the neck after the first coat. It really sucked that oil right in because it's a brand new neck, and I've done all the sanding sort of with that 4/0 steel wool that I want to do. So I'm going to do successive coats with just a paper towel. There's one thing about using steel wool that I thought I'd warn you about. If you're doing a steel wool on a assembled guitar, you're going to be steel wooling down here near a pickup more than likely, and that steel wool will be attracted to the magnets of your pickup. So any of those little fibers that come off will go straight to those magnets, and they'll be tough to get off. So if you're going to do that, I recommend you put masking tape over the magnets of your pickups. So hopefully that saves you a little bit of headache. There is some kind of a dye on this fretboard. I think it's just something that they did to the wood to make it look more like ebony, and you can see on the rag it's coming off a little bit. So I'll be doing this enough times so that I don't see any more of that dye coming off. The wood did look a little unnaturally dark when I got it. I thought it was dyed because the little fret tang indentions have extra dye in them on the sides of the neck. So that's okay. I just want to make sure that I get this thing looking as natural as I can make it look before I put the strings on it. This stuff is great because you don't need a ton of it, and it has a little pinhole in the bottle that just squirts out the tiniest little stream. So just a few drops really goes a long way. That's why a bottle like this will last you, years and years. So hope you all like that. It smells really good too, by the way. And if you do your guitars with this stuff over and over, it makes your cases smell really good too. So just a side benefit. Hope you guys enjoy the tip. So I'm more or less done oiling the fretboard. The guitar, I just couldn't resist kind of putting it together just loosely for a second, but it's got kind of a Kramer Farrington look with that headstock on it now. I think it's kind of cool. Even though I'm upset about the original neck, it's kind of a little bit of solace saying that it's going to look good. The bridge, now that the fretboard's been oiled, really matches the color of the fretboard, and even more so than the original neck. So I don't know, there's a few little bonuses here. I just hope that everything falls into place when we're all said and done. When you're readying the neck for headstock paint, just mask off everything that you don't want painted. It'll save yourself a whole lot of heartache just in case you have overspray somewhere. And don't forget, the tuner holes go all the way through, so you got to push this tape up tight on the back side. So you'll almost want to work around each hole with your finger. Make sure it's sealed up tight. That's pretty much it. On to paint. So I've been playing around a little bit. I've got a few coats of lacquer on the headstock here, and I've got it sanded with 1200 grit. I don't have it buffed yet, and I'm still going to wait on a headstock decal before I finish the headstock and put the final lacquer coats on it. I did go ahead and mount the neck though. I've got the same shim under it that I did before, and you know, I just re-drilled the neck holes. I think it was a 9/64, so I ended up having to use. It's a strange size screw. It's not a typical Fender screw. And I've got it all mounted up, shimmed up, test fitted with my straight edge. And I do come out a bit over the bridge, which is about where I was last time. I don't have all of the shims in there that I used last time. I just have the factory shim that came with it. So I'm in pretty good shape here. I think you know, next I've got to fit the tuners, and I've got to get a truss rod cover, and I'm gonna have to restring it at some point, but and of course adjust the neck. But I've come a long way, and I think this is actually going to work out. So I'm excited for the progress, and we'll just keep on keeping along. I've been doing a little work here. I've got a truss rod cover installed, the tuners installed, and I went ahead and polished the headstock. I'm not going to do a water slide decal after all, because I really like the way it looks right now. I think it'll look even better with those sort of bronze strings running across it, so I'm just going to leave it alone. The logo, the Fender logo on the guitar pick that I actually used for a truss rod cover is what really made me make my mind up on that. Plus, it just looks so good with it all just clean and shiny. I don't want to mess with it anymore, and I'd have to wait a couple of days for a water slide decal to arrive, and I'm just impatient right now. But these are the original tuners off the old headstock. Basically, to get those installed, there's no pilot holes for the set screws on the back of the tuners, or the back of the headstock. So basically you just kind of get them installed, get them snugged up with a nut on the front, set a straight edge up against this bottom edge of these tuners, and get them all nice and square to the edge of the headstock, and then drill your pilot holes. I think I used a 1/16 drill bit on those. They're super tiny, but everything's looking good. I think I'm about ready to restring this thing. Well, my workbench is looking pretty sloppy, but the guitar is looking pretty good. I managed to get the strings back on it, and I don't know, the neck just seems to suit it really well. The headstock turned out great. I really like the look without the logo or without a water slide decal of any kind. You know, the old headstock was pretty plain anyway, and even though, you know, that neck was stock, I actually think that the color of this fretboard more accurately matches the bridge. So I don't know, it's looking pretty good. The neck relief is not exactly where I want it to be. This neck actually has the opposite problem of the other neck, which is that
It has a little bit of a back bow when it's got no tension on it, and you can introduce a slight up bow with the truss rod maxed out, all the way in the counterclockwise direction. And I think over time it'll settle into a little bit more of a bow, which is actually where I want it. Right now it's got about 5/1000ths of an inch of neck relief, and I usually like to go for 10. So it's enough to be acceptable, but I think it could really, turn out to be a nice guitar over some time. It's just going to take a little bit. It took a little while after I strung the other neck for it to settle into its real relief, so we'll see how it is in a couple days. So with this new neck, the nut slots are kind of high. I just kind of noticed as I was, playing, that the strings are sitting quite a bit off the first fret, and I can slide a 20/1000 feeler gauge in here with plenty of room to spare, and so I need to reslot those. I have several small files that I use for nut slotting, and they're just basically toothed files, kind of like a saw blade, and they come in different widths, and you can get a set of these for pretty cheap. I think I got these off of eBay several years ago. But find the sizes that approximate your string sizes with a little bit of room to spare, and you have to cut each nut slot. And when you do that, you're shooting for, I think 20/1000 is a good gap for the bass side strings, the 3 bass side strings, and then 18/1000 would be your gap for the treble side strings, the higher strings. There's, I guess, maybe some debate about this wound G string on an acoustic, whether it should be an 18 or a 20, whether it should have more space like the bass strings, but that's up to you. You can kind of go by feel. There's many ways to do this. They make apparatuses that go under the strings here near the nut that will stop you from cutting the slots too deep. You can also stack up feeler gauges and put them next to the nut to keep yourself from going too far. I just like to take my time, go a little bit at a time, measure the gap at that first fret, and just that tells me where I am. But the basics are, you need to detune your strings one at a time, and then set them off to the side. And then you'll want to cut your nut slot. I try to stay roughly at the break angle of the strings. You want your contact point to be up at the front edge of the nut if you can. And so basically you just want to go a little bit at a time, and then I will keep coming back and measuring with my feeler gauge under that string. I'll put it back on, tune it up, and measure underneath it with that feeler gauge and see where I'm at. Now some of you might like to use a larger feeler gauge to sort of see when you're getting closer, but at this point I just throw caution to the wind and go for it. I guess the other thing to mention about this is that the larger side strings, the bass side strings, have a wider file. They take longer to cut. The bass side strings are much less easy to mess up than these treble side strings, because like a treble side nut file is really thin, and it's going to cut way faster into that slot. So just be careful about that when you're cutting those treble side strings, especially that high E string. It's going to slice through there with a lot more speed. So it takes much fewer passes of the file to cut that nut slot correctly. But that's about the process, and I'm going to get to work here. Very hard to hold the camera and cut a nut slot. So hope you guys understand, and I'll be wrapping up soon. Anyway, I really appreciate you guys following this video. If you like the channel, don't forget, like, subscribe, share this with your friends if you know somebody that'd be interested. I'd really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.